Let me start again. That was terrible.
That's all right. That's why we have editing.
Yeah, exactly. The magic of post.
Hi, everybody. So, doing something a little different today. I am out in Green Bank, Washington, but that's on Whidbey Island, which is a little north of Seattle. And I'm here with my friend Jason, who you better know as...
Redfish, bluefish.
Ah, we did it.
We did it.
And we're in a super secret location. It's not that secret. He's talked about it. But... why don't you kind of take it away, Jason? I mean, where are we? Why are we here?
Well, we are in Green Bank, Washington, like you said. We're on historic Green Bank Farm. It's a farm that was built in 1904. It goes way, way back. This was originally a cattle farm. Fast forward, changes of ownership and that sort of thing. This place was saved from basically financial developers coming in here in the early 2000s when a lot of financial troubles hit a lot of different people. Basically, this place was due to be just leveled and taken out. And basically the plan was to put in housing developments here. And some kind-hearted souls on the island stepped in and dug deep into their pockets and formed a trust and basically saved this place from being purchased by these developers and raised essentially. So we were able to save this place, and that's where we are today. And I chose this place after 2 long years of searching for location after location. And for one thing, for one reason or another, it would always fall through. It would always be insurance concerns. It could be concerns with the weight of aquariums. It could be anything. If there was a reason to turn me down, they found it in the past.
And we've been talking for a while. We more formally met at AGA, which was, it seems like it was like 10 years ago now because of human malware, but it's sadly only a little over a year ago.
I think we're coming up on 1.5 years.
I mean, we're getting close to that mark because it was May 2019.
Yeah.
And it feels like it was forever ago. But we had talked, and we've talked since, and you were kind of giving me the inside story of what you were planning. So what I want to do is ask you, in this time that we're in right now, why open a fish business?
That's a fair question. It's a very fair question. To talk about why, I think I need to talk about who I am and where I come from. So going way, way, way back, years and years and years ago when I was a little kid, I was a fish keeper. I loved my guppies. I loved my plastic plants at the time. We didn't have very many plants at the time, right? Loved my plastic plants, loved my guppies, but really I got into angelfish breeding. I was really into angelfish, just fell in love with them. And I did that all through my teens. Fast forward, eventually one day you gotta get a job, you gotta get out of the house, right? You gotta earn some money. I went overseas and went to work for the U.S. government, and on behalf of the U.S. government for many, many years. I lived overseas. And most of my postings were in East Asia or Southeast Asia. I was also posted to Europe from time to time and South Asia. Long story made short, I couldn't keep fish anymore, because if you live overseas and you're working on behalf of the government, all they have to do is pick up the phone. You're on a plane, you're going somewhere, and you have no idea where you're going. So how do you keep fish? You don't. The answer is you don't. So what I did all those years living overseas is kind of to feed the monkey. I would attend aquarium conventions, trade conventions, those sorts of things. In Asia, tons of them in Singapore, quite a few in Jakarta, all around the area. Malaysia, KL, Kuala Lumpur, there were quite a few there. So that's kind of what I did for years. If I was around, I would always look, hey, what kind of conventions are around? And chances are pretty good that there would be an aquatics convention. So I just went to loads of conventions year after year to kind of feed the beast. And I made this amazing list of contacts doing that, shaking hands, accepting business cards, that sort of thing. So kind of fast forward, I'm back in the States. I've been here for many years. My wife and me and my son, we're back in the US now. And I can finally get back into aquatics. We finally have time to keep fish and to grow plants. And that's what I've been doing for some years now. And the pandemic hits, the current problem. So I don't think that I have to tell anybody that this is, the current pandemic has caused massive supply chain problems with everything from fish food to aquariums to plants. Especially plants are really tough right now. And livestock, animals are really, really tough right now to get into the country because, for instance, Africa's not sending anything out. Virtually nothing is leaving Africa right now in terms of livestock. Very little is leaving South America and Central America. So I just decided the time is right, going ahead and put my plan into action, open up my shop and leverage some of those contacts that I've made overseas and start bringing in some interesting things.
We've talked about this in a couple of phone calls now, because we talk, every couple of weeks we have
at least
a phone call for a couple hours or so. We talk quite a lot. And I mean, you guys can tell by the sound and by behind us, he's just moving in. This is not an established store at all. We've got a few things in place, and you'll see some B-roll at some point where some of the stuff that he has here in the shop to get set up. So this is early, and I did this on purpose. And Jason, you were kind of a little apprehensive about well, it's just gonna be a bunch of random tanks on the ground. I mean, that's not interesting. But to me, the story of why is interesting, and that story of how you came to this point. So what I really want to touch on is, in a phone call, we talked about the stroke of luck finding the place you have. And I mean, you guys can kind of see it seems simple, but we're in this really beautiful, and I can't stress this enough, unfortunately there's tons of smoke in the sky right now from a bunch of wildfires all over the place in Oregon and California, the eastern side of Washington, that are just bringing tons of smoke. There's just a gray haze outside. So I can't show that very well. There will be a little bit, but you're at this really cool place where shops basically never open up. And yet, because of the pandemic, one had to close, and you got kind of the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, it's just blind luck. That's all there is to it. It's just blind luck. I've been looking for a couple of years, like I said, and the pandemic hit, and I was just kind of browsing my email, in fact. I'm signed up to a distribution list. It's for locals only, people that live on Whidbey Island. And I opened up my email, and I was kind of skimming through it, and it was the for sale, I think, section of the email, or real estate, something like that. And sure enough, there was an ad, and it said, have you ever dreamed of owning a little slice of heaven on Greenbank Farm? Something to that effect. And I thought, well, I haven't, but now I am, And I immediately jumped in the vehicle, my truck, and I came up to Greenbank Farm, got my phone out, started looking in all kinds of windows. And This sort of thing just doesn't happen at Greenbank Farm. There are no vacancies here ever because this place is just absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. This sort of thing doesn't happen here, but unfortunately, due to the ongoing pandemic, this used to be a studio and a gallery. So did the place next to it, and I think the place next to that as well. Unfortunately, those sorts of businesses often are the first to go when these kinds of things happen. Yeah, and that's kind of what happened here. And all of Building C here at Greenbank Farm, just place after place opened up, and they've been open for quite some time.
Yeah, but there's a couple. There's a cheese place that's next door here in one of the other buildings. There's a pie place, which I'm pretty sure if I don't visit for my lady, I'll get screamed at. But what I want to talk about now is you've found this kind of stroke of luck due to some unfortunate circumstances for others, and it's hard for a lot of people right now. We know that bringing fish in is hard, but you've got some contacts that can get stuff that most other people are having trouble or just can't even get right now. What's the grand vision? I mean, is it purely a online? Are we looking at this being a physical? I can come visit Greenbank Farm. I can come visit Redfish, Bluefish. Is it going to be standard hours by appointment? Let's go over that kind of stuff. What's your planning?
Well, it's we're setting this whole thing up at some really strange times right now with the current pandemic situation going on. This is a full brick and mortar shop, and it will be a full brick and mortar shop. Now, in the beginning, right now, we're going back and forth, and it's pretty common. A lot of businesses on the island right now, and in fact, in the entire area, California included, are either curbside service only, or call and then knock on the door first, and we'll let you in kind of service. That's very likely how we're going to be opening our doors when we're ready to open our doors. It's a little bit of a strange position to be in, I admit that much. Now, with that said, we are fully committed to being 100% available online. So we will not sell anything in the shop that we won't also sell and ship online. That's just kind of something that I decided a long while back. Nothing's more frustrating than coming across a fantastic shop and maybe you're on vacation and you see all kinds of fish and all kinds of great stuff that you want, but you can't get them, you're on vacation. So you ask them, hey, do you have a website? Sure, we have a website, but we don't ship fish. We don't ship live things. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten stung by that one.
As I say, I know there's a large fish store in our area. They get enough pub. I don't think we need to help them out too much. Yeah. Everybody knows who they are. And, that's probably the most common complaint they get is that they don't ship fish. And part of it is just a commitment to a certain level of quality, right? Shipping fish is tough.
It is tough. It's very labor intensive.
Let me ask you this. When you're set up and you're running, what are we looking at for quarantine process? How are you getting from farms, wholesalers? What makes you different? What makes you special? And why should a person seeing this interview with two tiny YouTubers in the Fish Fam talking about opening a store in an echoey room because it's not set up yet? Why should they pay attention?
Well, I'm a little different from most people in the fish industry for a couple reasons. I'll touch on one. I touched on it before. I've been into fish keeping for a long, long time. The very first job I ever had in my life was, in fact, working for a really large outfit in Texas named Paradise Pets. Now, they're not around anymore, but something that, that's really when I caught the bug. And something that was a job requirement at the time, working for David, the owner, was that I obtain an import license. So way back in the day, I was barely old enough to get an import license. I got one, and I've just had one ever since. I've just renewed it ever since. So That's one thing that definitely sets me apart from other, mom and pop shops. They're going to go to some kind of, generally speaking, a domestic source for their tropical fish. And there are some great ones. And there are also some not so great ones as well.
Unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. The same thing is very true overseas. There are some fantastic suppliers of fish and shrimp and what have you overseas. And then there are some that are definitely not good. I made it a point to keep in contact with people in the trade that you really want to stay in contact with. One of them is based in Germany. One of them is based in Poland. There's another in the Czech Republic. In fact, there are two in the Czech Republic. There are a couple of them in Indonesia as well. So these are people I've stayed in close contact with over the years. I've got my finger on the pulse of what they're doing, and the quality is there. Now, speaking about bringing animals in, kind of a quarantine process, there are really two ways to do it. There's the rotation method, and then there's staging. So a rotation method is kind of where, you bring fish in. They could be from overseas, they could be from a domestic source, whatever. The rotation method is when you bring fish in and they go into designated quarantine tanks. And those tanks are only for quarantine and quarantine only. That's the only thing they're used for. And then usually they'll stay in there for 7 to 10, 14 days. Generally 7 to 10 days is pretty common. A lot of that is for observation. A lot of people don't necessarily treat fish right away in a quarantine tank. I know that Rachel O'Leary observes her fish. I don't think that she treats them right off the bat. So that's the rotation method. Once they're cleared from quarantine, you rotate them out to your stock tanks where they're sold. I don't like the rotation method. I am a stager. So the staging method is basically when you bring fish in, they go into an aquarium. That aquarium right then is a quarantine tank, right? And then once they clear their quarantine process, you may be treating them with an antibacterial, you may be treating them with anything, it doesn't matter. Once they've cleared that process, you begin a titration process. You basically begin titrating water into that tank, flush all of the water out. At that point, it's no longer a quarantine tank, it's staged.
Then we know the process we're looking at for making sure we have healthy fish. So am I coming to you for guppies? Am I coming to you for African cichlids? Like what's the stock going to look like when we get this rolling?
Right. So I focus, I'm just like you, I'm a big plant guy. I love my plants, I love my little green friends, but I love my nanofish as well. And basically my interest and what I focus on are what you could call nanofish, I suppose. But you got to be careful with that phrase because some people see that very strictly as fish that are 2 inches and smaller. I'm talking about, Batis, Apistogrammas, guppies, goldfish, those kinds of fish. So I really don't do too many of the bigger fish, your cichlids, your really large angels, those sorts of things. I love those fish, but they're tough to ship. Yeah, okay. So I'm kind of avoiding those at this point. That could change in the future, but I honestly see a trend developing where the bigger fish are definitely going out of kind of popularity. I think that there'll always be a call for them in the trade, like the larger rainbows. I don't think those are going anywhere. But I think your larger African cichlids, your larger South American cichlids, I'm seeing less and less demand for that these days, and I think they're honestly sort of on their way out.
Well, and I think part of those fish is regional too. Like you go to the Midwest where you've got basically liquid rock everywhere. It's so easy to keep African cichlids that it's almost just the standard out there. And keeping something like a softwater Corydora or something like that is way less common just because you have to do a lot more work with your water or there's a lot more process to getting those fish adjusted. I can get nanofish all sorts of places. What are we looking at? Because I know some of the secret sauce because we've had enough conversations. Give me a spoiler of something that tells you like this is why it's special. Let's say we're talking Corydoras, right? Corydoras. We just mentioned that. What would we expect selection wise? Like, what's something that you expect to commonly have available that makes it a little different than, say, like your big boys out there like wet spot tropical fish, or even just like, you know, mom and pop local fish store that is going to always have, well, I'm always going to have salt and pepper cories. I'm always going to have albino cories. You know, what is it that's the appeal to go, I'm going to ship myself fish from this guy online rather than go to my local store?
So we've spoken about this more than once. There are definitely certain strains of fish. Not only are there certain fish, but there are certain strains of fish that are available, commonly available in Asia and in Eastern Europe, in Central Europe, Western Europe. You know, there are different little pockets of availability that we just don't get here. To kind of give you a spoiler, a Cory that I will be bringing in fairly regularly out of Germany is one known as Corydoras SP Black Venezuela. Now, the name SP Black Venezuela is a bit of a red herring, because it seems that the fish actually originally came from Peru. Now, we don't know for sure, right? We don't know for sure, but what happened is some people from Germany isolated this fish and got it out legally and got it back to Germany and worked on it for some years and figured out how to crack this fish, how to breed it out. And as with most things fish, you know, everyone wanted it, right?
Yeah.
And the popularity was and is still so high for this particular Cory that you just can't get it out of Europe. There's just not enough demand to keep up with what people want there. So luckily, because of some contacts I've made, people I've stayed in close contact with, that's a great example of a fish that I'm going to be bringing in regularly from Germany.
Okay. And I guess the other thing I would ask is, you know, we see very rarely do we get to like look into the world of some of the fish farms that are out there. Of course, you know, the aquarium co-op showed us a lot of that kind of stuff, where like the trips to Israel and Hong Kong and all that kind of stuff, we get to see a lot of stuff we normally don't see in the YouTube world. But you mentioned earlier the Czech Republic, Poland, and if you're not like super in the know, those guys are crazy fish breeders. Like, those countries have really, really immaculate fish breeding, and they do certain things better than anyone else.
Absolutely.
A lot like how way back in the 80s and 90s, you had all the Russian breeders for guppies, which is where the Moscow guppy comes from, right? Is these insane guppy breeders that basically only Russia was doing this kind of stuff before, you know, your places like Thailand and stuff like that really picked up and started going crazy. Let's play a fun game. Czech Republic, right? What's the thing that's coming out of there that makes you excited?
Oh gosh, out of the Czech Republic, something that I get really excited about, and they're very hard to come across. They're very hard to get because when they show up, they're gone the next day. And that would be the longfin veil-tailed neon tetra. Now, most people have not seen this fish before, and they don't even know it exists. But yes, indeed, there's a longfin variety of the neon tetra. Those are extremely rare. There's also a longfin veil-tail variety of the neon tetra that was a product of selective breeding, many, many years of selective breeding in the Czech Republic. That's a fish that's coming out of the Czech Republic that really excites me.
Okay, so let's look at like Poland. What's the one fish on the list? I mean, we know when there's lots, but what's the one that has you the most excited to be able to get in the hands of folks in the United States?
So Poland, that would have to be their super redback Makapuru angelfish. They are a gorgeous fish. I don't know if you've ever seen them before.
I'm going to have to try and find a picture and put it in.
Oh, man.
Just so people can see this, but
they're just something else. The Makapuru super reds, and you know how fish are. The Polish call them one name, the Czechs call them another name, the Germans usually call them a third name.
Well, heck, I mean, you get 3 different names for a fish inside the United States.
Easily,
you know?
easily. So the Makapuru Reds are really fantastic, coming out of both Poland and the Czech Republic right now. They're really fantastic. Now there's some other varieties that I suspect came from that same Makapuru line. They're referring to as Makapuru Super Redbacks. That's going to be a nice fish to unpack.
I don't want to like put rough timeline on you because that's so hard. Anybody building a business, like you can't anticipate everything. Timelines never go the way you want them to. But in a human malware world, when do you think you're going to have the place built out? Not necessarily like now I'm shipping orders, but how long? What's your timeline at first just to get the shop here to where you are ready for initial business and to start, say, bringing some stuff in and go through your quarantine process?
Right. Honestly, I'm shooting for, this is very aggressive, I'm shooting for 2 weeks from today. That's when I would like to have all of these aquariums set up, ready to go. And that's incredibly aggressive.
You're a madman.
Yes. I know. Absolutely not going to happen. But you know what? We've got to have lofty goals.
Yeah. And then from when you're set up, let's say in 2 weeks, but whatever time that takes, right? Mm-hmm. From setup, then first stocking orders. Because you got to get tank seasoned, all that kind of stuff. There's definitely a process going on. When do you think? Is that like a month after? Is that 2 months after?
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably, I'm going to call it a month after that 2 week period has elapsed. After we have, the aquarium set up, water in their filtration and all that stuff is going. I'm going to call it a month after that point. That's when I would like to, have everything in here. Everything should be cleared from quarantine. Already got all the shipping stuff worked out, ready to go.
Okay. I guess the last thing if someone from, whether they're one of our audiences or just happens to somehow visit Whidbey Island and come this way, as opposed to maybe the few people that will be local, what can they expect as far as when this is done? What's your vision? Other than, we talked about the fish and stuff, but it's kind of like, is it just going to be like your generic fish store where it's like lines of tanks and that's it? How much you do YouTube as well, which we'll have links to your channel, of course. Is there going to be any part of this where like live streams or whatever are going to happen in the store? Let's talk about that a little bit and how that's going to all kind of interact together, because you do YouTube on top of starting this both online and brick and mortar business.
Right. Well, you touched on it right there. It is a brick and mortar business. We're going to have some little strange procedures due to the ongoing human virus going around. But yes, you touched on it. It is a brick and mortar store. It is an online business. It's also a studio and it's also a gallery. So this place for years was a studio and a gallery. It was used as a showroom space. And I fully intend to use it for that into the future. So what you can expect to see when you come in here is an amazing selection of imported fish, amazing selection of plants. Everything's clean and healthy. Everything's cleared quarantine. But you're also going to be able to see quite a number of beautiful planted tanks and aquascapes in a studio gallery setting. So because this place is so seasonal, Green Bank Farm is very seasonal. All of spring and all of summer, this place is packed with foot traffic of people coming over from California, from Idaho, you name it, all over the United States. And I want them, when they come into the shop, to look around and say, wow, I've never seen anything like these aquariums here against the wall. I want that to be their introduction to aquascaping, to nature aquariums, to planted tanks. I would like to be involved in that process of being able to take them by the hand and saying, you can do this, trust me, it's easy.
So with that, we'll, of course, as things get more set up, I'll be coming back, because this is not a long jaunt for me, and it's a fun jaunt because I get to go like over a ferry and all that kind of fun stuff. which, you know, taking the angry sports car on a ferry is always a giggle because it gets real loud. But you know, as process goes, we'll come back and we'll definitely like see the evolution of this opening, which to me, that's kind of the fun story, is being able to step back and see from nothing to something, right? And that's part of what in my professional life I love the most is, you know, taking an idea and making it real. So being able to watch that as a part of my hobby with someone who has become a friend of mine is very, very interesting to me. So one final thing that I'm going to ask. When we come back, right, what is the part of this process that people can watch on your channel, of course, but also we'll get little updates from me. What is the part of this that you think is the most appealing from a hobbyist perspective? What gets you the most excited as a hobbyist as opposed to the start of a business owner?
Oh gosh.
I don't know, that's the hard one.
Tough one. That's a really tough one. You know, I've got to say it's the, I don't know how to put it, the unknown, the thrill of the hunt, you know, it's that Christmas morning thing, you know, you got your socks on, you're vibrating in bed as a little kid, you know, you jump up and you run out there and there they are, all the presents. It is the day and you're about to open them up. That buzz is really what drives me. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
No, I mean, okay, so I have to sidebar with a story now. And this might, who knows, this might end up somewhere else and be totally cut out. But so I very recently ordered some fish, and from a guy on Aquabid who's a very, very, very highly respected breeder for rainbow fish, especially. But I ordered something else, and I've spoiled it to like my channel members, and eventually it'll come out on this. If it's in this video, you'll know. I was communicating back and forth with a gentleman, and it was like, yeah, it's on Next Day Express, and it's going to show up. It's supposed to be before noon. Well, it comes noon, nothing showed up yet. It's like, well, hey man, if it was the before noon guarantee, because that's usually USPS's thing, you can go get your shipping back, and you don't need to refund me. Don't worry about it. I'm just sitting here like an anxious little kid on Christmas. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And as soon as he got the delivered alert, he sent me an email going, well, like, Christmas is coming for you, kid. Hope the presents are okay. And it's like, yeah, it's like he knows exactly that feeling that I'm sitting for. And like, you know, I'm ripping through this box. It's like, I gotta tempt my fish. I gotta make sure everything's alive. I gotta get them going, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, each bag is this little happy present.
Oh yeah.
It's even when they're like, you know, like, well, these 5 bags are all the same fish. It doesn't matter. Everyone feels like special and different.
Absolutely. They're living tropical jewels.
Yeah.
That's what I've never lost that little kid wonder that I got when I was probably 7 or 8. You know, I got dragged into. I remember very distinctly. I have been around for a while. And back in the day, we didn't have Walmart. There wasn't Walmart. There was Kmart. And Kmart sold fish.
Yep.
And I remember I was a little boy, about 7 years old, wearing my flip-flops and my Safari Zoo t-shirt. I remember it very specifically. I walked into Kmart with my dad, and I saw a tank full of platies. And I decided at that point, those are living tropical jewels. And I never lost that. I see fish that way, you know? And I don't know how you can't get a box of these beautiful creatures and not feel some level of excitement over them. I just don't.
I think that's what sets like Fish Nerds apart, is there is definitely something deep in the brain or the heart, however you want to feel it, that says, I feel like a kid on Christmas every time. Every time it's that joyous anxiety, that excitement, and in that, especially some of us who fall for multiple tank syndrome, where we're just like, I really want that fish. How fast can I get a tank ready? How fast can I get that? You know, like you're just sitting there trying to make excuses. It's like I think that's one of the most wonderful parts about being a fish keeper, and I imagine being able to take this step for you, right, where you will get to be there for importing fish that this area, this country, and sometimes in this case, the whole of YouTube doesn't ever see. And now they can. That has to be, this is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah.
Oh yes. And you know, we're talking about this, you know, just like you were saying, one other thing I wanted to touch on, you know, the joy and the, you know, the wonder of fish keeping and that next new fish that's coming in, what's it going to be like? What's it going to look like? How's this one going to be? That gets way worse when you also love plants like we do too.
Yeah.
Because all of that pain that's caused by, you know, our addiction to fish is twice as bad when you're just as addicted to plants.
Yep. Thank you so much just for this little chat on camera. I mean, we've had more than a few on the phone, but it's fun to put this out there for other folks to see, because this to me is an exciting time to like be able to watch someone who has a YouTube channel, Redfish, Bluefish. Check Jason out; he's a good guy. You stream once a week?
Once a week, every Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, a little late out.
A little bit late, but
and
it's
then
pretty crowded these days.
I mean, I imagine once you get the shop going, you'll have a little bit of extra video content too coming,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, we'll be doing multiple live streams earlier in the day.
Awesome.
With the shop up and running.
So I think it's really exciting because people will get to watch this unfold. And it's not often that we get to see a fish business unfold. You know, we can look at some of the ones we know the best. Mm-hmm. There's this teeny tiny shop no one's ever heard of in Washington. And you know, you can hear the story, but you don't get to see it, right? Because YouTube was started after the business existed. Where this, you started YouTube before taking that leap, and now we get to kind of watch it all unfold and watch this process. And to me, that's kind of exciting, because it takes a lot of people along for a ride. Because I'm sure tons of people out there are like, man, if I could own a fish store, I would. Because it's one of those things where it's like, if I could run a fish business and just do fish, I would love it. You know, I'm sure there are a lot of people like that. I'm weird in that the second I know that my hobby is work, I start like getting a little apprehensive.
Yes.
but that's why I still work the job I work.
Well, I will tell you that as you get closer and closer to the big night, the pressure starts mounting for sure. You start realizing, wait a minute, this is going to be a whole lot of work. Yes, it will be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for you guys watching. Definitely check Jason's channel out, Redfish, Bluefish. The link's down below. There'll be a link in the corner, link at the end of the video, all those things. You know, give them a little sub, a little like in this video. If you enjoy stuff like this, little interviews, kind of more chats. You know, this is us talking, less interview, but it's still kind of an interview. Give it a little like, give it a thumbs up. Definitely shoot comments down below. If you could get any fish that you don't normally see in a store, and don't go with some of this thing that's only been caught 3 times in the wild. Okay, come on, we can't do that. But you know, stuff that we know is out there, but it's really hard to get. What fish would you want to be able to pick up? Tell me in the comments down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.